The documentary Before the Flood, featuring Leonardo DiCaprio. Speaking and traveling as the United Nations Messenger of Peace, Leonardo DiCaprio draws attention to global warming in a visually pleasing documentary. Even though there is hardship and devastation, the movie is beautifully presented. Mr. DiCaprio draws the viewers in through the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. The artwork is done in panels, beginning with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Then the deadly sins are depicted in the second panel. And finally, the last panel shows paradise, degraded and destroyed.
We are burning so many fossil fuels that the ice is melting. The Arctic is like the air conditioning for the Northern Hemisphere. If it goes away, that's going to change the currents, that's going to change the weather patterns, that's going to make floods and droughts more catastrophic. I think it's the most dramatic transformation of a large environment ever.
Scientists agree that the globe is warming, but they are also fighting a massive disinformation campaign to confuse the public.
If you want something that you can do without appealing to any higher authority, such as government or whatever, I can't think of an easier out than changing your diet. You can start tonight.
Simply changing your diet from chicken to beef will help the environment. Ma Jun says in China, people have concerns about climate change, but first and foremost because their everyday life is affected. Alvin Lin says even though China has some of the largest challenges, like their huge population, they are going to prioritize wind and solar rather than coal consumption. If China can do it, then I think the rest of the world can, he says.
We have 700 million households who cook using biomass today. 700 million households. If those households move to coal, you have that much more use of fossil fuels. Then the entire world is fried. If anyone gives you this very cute stuff and tells you, oh, the world's poor should move to solar, why do they have to make the mistakes that we have made? I hear this all the time from American NGOs. I'm like, wow, I mean, if it was that easy, I would have really liked the US to move towards solar. What happened? Let's put our money where our mouth is. We have to practice what we preach. Absolutely. I'm sorry. We are doing more investment in solar today. China is doing much more investment in solar today than the US is. What is the US doing which the rest of the world can learn from? You're a fossil addicted country, but if you are seriously disengaging, it's something for us to learn from. And it'll be leadership that we can all hold up to our government and say, listen, if the US can do it, and the US is doing it, in spite of all their pressures, we can do it as well. The sad part of it is, it's just not happening. And people like me, we are rich enough to withstand the first hit of climate change. But it's the poor of India, it's the poor of Africa, it's the poor of Bangladesh who are impacted today by what I believe is the first signs of climate change.
Anna Tong from Kiribati. We are seeing events that we did not see in the past. It's not about when the entire islands are underwater. It's well before then is going to be the crisis, and it's already happening. What we are facing at the moment is severe flooding. It's gone into the freshwater ponds, and that's how people get their drinking water. Jeremy Jackson says, the oceans are like this big buffer because they absorb carbon dioxide. They take up about a third of the carbon dioxide that we dump into the atmosphere. So, because of that, they are a stabilizing force in climate. The problem is the ocean can't do its job fast enough with this absurd rate of carbon dioxide emissions.
Taking away the ecosystems that normally help us to restabilize the climate. Like oceans, rainforests absorb carbon from our atmosphere. Decades and decades of the forest breathing in the carbon, storing it in the trunks and the leaves and the organic matter. So those carbon emissions are being held safe for us. Until we clear them and light them on fire, it acts like a carbon bomb and releases massive carbon emissions back into the atmosphere.
One solution to the climate change problem is a carbon tax. Carbon tax would basically be a tax on any kind of activity that put carbon in the atmosphere. So when you tax something, you raise the price. People are going to tend to consume less of it. In fact, that's sort of the number one lesson of economics.
Politicians, when they call them our elected leaders, are really our elected followers. They do what the people want them to do. We need to preach to the American people. Unless the American people are convinced, the politicians will fall in line very quickly. A lot of people now got confused about fish. Facts are crystal clear. The ice is melting. The earth is warming. The sea level is rising. Those are facts. Rather than feeling, oh my God, it's hopeless. Say, okay, this is the problem. Let's be realistic. Let's find a way out. There are ways out. If we stopped burning fossil fuel right now, the planet would still keep warming for a while before long could recover. You're saying that if we do the right thing, we're going to heat up, or we're going to turn it off, something. Would that work?
Pierce Sellers. And what seemed almost impossible to deal with, became possible. Jeremy Jackson says, the ocean. Leonardo DiCaprio also met with the Pope. He called upon the world community to accept the modern science of climate change. A Pope has never done anything like this in history. So what can you do to fight climate change? Here is a wrap-up. Consume differently. What you buy, what you eat, how you get your power. Vote for leaders who will fight climate change by ending fossil fuel subsidies, investing in renewables, leaving fossil fuels in the ground, and supporting a price on carbon. That is a wrap-up of Before the Flood.